right, so for some of you that were not able to do practice problems with me in class because you didn't do your homework originally, so we're taking notes, I'm going to do a few for you on completing the square. And hopefully you can do the other ones after that, okay? Completing the square to solve an equation. So let's start with, I don't know, number 4, which is x squared minus 12x plus 11 equals 0. I need to get this constant, this number by itself to the other side, so I subtract 11 from each side. I'm going to leave a blank spot here, and it's always going to be a plus, because anytime you square something, you get a positive. Negative 11. Half of 12 is, negative 12, sorry, is negative 6. And then negative 6 squared is positive 36. So I'm going to add that 36 here. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other, because I'm introducing a brand new value into the equation, right? I've got to balance out my equation. And this side then turns into 25, positive. Okay. And this side, I can factor. What we're actually doing, the long way of what we're actually doing is factoring this, where two numbers that add up to negative 12 and two numbers that multiply to be positive 36. So those two numbers that add up to be negative 12 and the same two numbers that multiply together to be positive 36 are negative 6 and negative 6. Okay? We already knew that because we made it be like that. We created it to be perfect like that. We already found that negative 6 when we took half of 12. So we didn't actually have to do the other piece of it. Okay? So actually what you end up with is, of course, x minus 6 times x minus 6. I'm doing this on the side over here so you can see the long version of what I'm going to show you in just a second. Now, rewind. Anytime I have something times itself exactly, I can rewrite it as that value squared, right? Or as that term squared. X minus 6 and x minus 6 are exactly the same thing, so I can write x minus 6 squared. Okay? So I'm going to rearrange this. I'm not going to change it in any way. It's going to be the exact same value, but instead I'm going to write it as, I'm going to factor it out as x minus 6 squared. And that minus 6 I already knew because it came from half of negative 12. So the minute you do that already, you can write this part of it. The important part about, I imagine you may be thinking to yourself, why did I even have to write plus 36 here? The important part here is that we had to know plus 36 here because we had to take that value and add it to the other side. Okay? And at this point, I can solve it. The inverse operation of something squared is taking the square root. So I'm going to take, I know this looks funny, sorry, the square root. I wonder if I can make that skinnier. Oh, the colors are different. So if I did yellow, it would be skinnier. Oh, the yellow and the purple make red. That's weird. Okay, the square root of both of those. What that does is it cancels out the 2. So all on this side, I just have x minus 6 is equal to, and remember, whenever we take the square root, it has two answers. It has a positive answer and a negative answer. That's where we get our two answers from for our quadratic. Okay, so I want to get x by itself. Whenever I am solving, if something asks me to solve, the first thing that should go through my mind when solving an equation is, how do I get the variable by itself? I need it all by itself. The last step here is I need to add 6. So I already know x equals plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 6. I've said it before, I'll say it again. there are a lot of times you will see it as, instead of this, the exact same thing as x equals positive 6 plus or minus the square root of 25, and it'll just be, sorry about that square root, it'll just be in the same order. But these actually have an exact answer, right? Because the square root of 25 is 5. So I have two answers. I have x1, which is positive 5 plus 6, which is 11, and x2, which is negative 5 plus 6, which is positive 1. Okay, so those are my two answers for that one. Let's do another one. I hope I don't redo any of the ones I did in the other videos. By the way, if you didn't watch that second video, there are ones that are answered there. How about number 9? Number 9 has r squared minus 4r minus 91 equals 7. If I add 91 to each side, like I must in order to complete the square, I am going to have r squared minus 4r. This cancels, but remember I'm going to add a blank space equals, and now it's not just 0 there. 91 plus 7 is 98. Okay. All right, half of negative 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared, or negative 2 times negative 2, equals positive 4. So I'm adding positive 4 to both sides. Okay. And this side turns out to be 102. And over here, I'm going to factor this. I already know I'm going to use that negative 2 that I originally found. It's going to be x minus 2 squared. Okay. Now I can solve it. Take the square root of each side. Bam. Square root here. That ends up being, this cancels now, and the square root, all I have is x minus 2, equals plus or minus the square root of 102. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So x equals, and I'll write it this way this time, positive 2 plus or minus the square root of 102. And I'm just going to leave it like this because I know that 102 does not have a perfect square root. We could go into a little, actually maybe we should, a little lesson on reducing this. What does that look like? The square root of 102. There's no perfect square root of 102, right? But 102 could be the product of two numbers of which one of them does have a square root. So check this out. All right, I have to nix this idea because I just did the math behind the scenes, and there actually isn't a perfect square that's divisible into there. So please remind me tomorrow to go over that with you guys. Let's just do some more practice problems here. We may have time for one more here. How about, what's a good one? How about 8, number 8? K squared minus 12k plus 23 equals 0. Cool. And subtract 23 from each side. K squared minus 12k plus, I need a blank spot, and this is canceled now, right? Equals negative 23. Half of negative 12 is negative 6. I'm going to go ahead and just put this down here so I don't forget, so I don't have to write it on the side, squared. And negative 6 squared is 36. And I added 36 to this side, so I have to add 36 to this side. So 36 minus 23 really is 13. Okay. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 6 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 13. So x is just equal to, if I add 6 to both sides, positive 6 plus or minus the square root of 13. And I'm just going to leave it like that and not turn it into a decimal because this is an exact answer. This is actually two answers, one with the plus and one with the minus, so that's perfectly okay. Oh, we have time for another one. How about number, are there any more complicated ones? You guys should be experts by this point. How about number 11? Did I literally just do number 11? I don't think I did. Let's try it. Number 11, k squared minus 4k plus 1 equals negative 5. Subtract 1, k squared minus 4k plus blank spot. These ones canceled, equals negative 6. Okay, half of 4 is negative 2. Half of negative 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Remember, I have to know this number because I need to add it on this side. X minus 2 squared equals negative 2. Okay, I'm going to stop right now because I already know there's no real solutions. How do I know that, you ask? I know that because my next step would be to take the square root of both sides, right? And now I am taking the square root of a negative number, and there are no real numbers that answer that question. If you put it into the calculator, it gives you an error back, right? If I put in the square root, second square root, negative 2, it's going to yell at me. Tip, error, non-real answers. It tells you non-real answers. Okay, so hopefully that'll be enough to get you guys started. And if you do those, the ones from the other video, and hopefully some we do in class, you should be getting pretty good at completing the square.